Mighty people. Please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm joined today by many of my Alberta caucus colleagues giving a strong response with regard to Justin Trudeau's throne speech yesterday. The throne speech was an insult to every one of the constituents that we represent. The lip service that he paid to our province was shameful, given the effects of his self-created economic downturn that they are feeling, that they've been feeling for years. His speech provided no path forward for our province to get back to work and ignored the countless policy changes that Alberta has asked for. In response to this tone-deaf throne speech, I have sponsored a petition to force Justin Trudeau to listen to our province. The challenges that Alberta are facing can no longer be ignored by the rest of Canada. In the last election, Albertans overwhelmingly rejected Justin Trudeau's damaging policies and approach, and enough is enough. This petition is co-sponsored by our colleague within the United Conservative Party, MLA Jeremy Nixon. Jeremy's in Alberta today and also issued this statement. My neighbours in Calgary-Klein are proud to be a part of Canada, but are frustrated with the federal government's mishandling of the economy and its hostile approach to the energy sector. My neighbours have been proud to contribute to Canada and are generous in their communities. Now that they are struggling, they need Canada to stand up for them, their industry, their jobs, and their families. We don't want a special deal, but we do demand a fair deal. And the petition, petition E-2303, reads as follows. Whereas the Liberal government has intentionally imposed damaging legislation like Bill C-69 and C-48, which has and will continue to have devastating impacts on Alberta's economy. The Liberal government refuses to examine the unfairness in the equalization formula. Albertans overwhelmingly rejected the policies and approach of the current Liberal government in the most recent election. The Alberta jobs crisis has been made worse by the Liberal government's mishandling of the economy and hostile approach to the energy sector, which has resulted in lost jobs and investment. And the Alberta government indicated its intent to explore options which would restore respect for the province and benefit the people of Alberta to exercise its rights in areas of provincial autonomy in the face of a federal government who is opposing Albertans' interests. We, the undersigned citizens of Canada, call upon the House of Commons to allow Alberta to take any and all measures deemed necessary to further its rightful autonomy and advance the interests of all Albertans. Enough is enough. The status quo cannot continue. We will not allow this government to run roughshod over the people of our community who are out of work, who are suffering, and feel like they have no voice or no place in our country. Every Canadian needs to understand the consequences of the unity crisis that Justin Trudeau has put us in. And we ask every Canadian to join us, join our constituents in fighting for what is right, and sign petition E-2303 by going to e2303.ca. Enough is enough, and we will fight for our province. Thank you.
One of the things that came up in the throne speech was that the government is seeking a reduction in wireless prices by 25%. What priorities would your party like to set out on telecommunications and wireless specifically?
Well, you know, the measure of 25% is fairly useless. It's an arbitrary number that the government has put forward without any details to achieve it. I look at metrics in terms of how much we are paying compared to similar jurisdictions. So for 5 gigabytes of data, a Canadian receives, an American receives 12 gigabytes of data, and the difference is more stark internationally. So the question really becomes, how are we so non-competitive? And surely there's international best practice that we can employ here at home that will allow Canadians and consumers' rights to be protected, as well as to ensure that there is free market and competition for wireless services, as well as protecting privacy and critical infrastructure. And frankly, wireless broadband infrastructure, that is critical infrastructure for the country. In coming weeks, and certainly in the new legislative session, our party has given a lot of thought to a legislative approach that we will be pushing the government on. This is a new area of policy for us, and I don't want to tip our hand, but I will say this. there is best practice. There's novel ways to look at this and achieve everything. I think that the reality is, and I'm going to call a spade, this is the most heavily lobbied industry in the country. And frankly, I just don't think that consumers should have their voice, and free markets should have their voices overridden by access to MPs and lobbyists. So that's a change.
So what are some of the interventions you're looking at?
Again, I have learned my lesson in previous parliaments on putting everything forward without paving a runway, and that's what I'll be doing in coming weeks.
The federal government has approved, I guess, the greenhouse gas emissions plan in Alberta for large emitters. Is that not an olive branch there for Alberta a little bit?
We have seen nothing out of this government that will adequately address the question of climate change. If we are going to address the question of climate change, we need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. There is nothing in their modeling that shows that their current price on carbon is going to actually reduce greenhouse gas emissions. But we know that it is going to have a severe impact, not just on the Alberta economy, but the Canadian economy as a whole, as well as individuals who are struggling to make ends meet. So that's not an acceptable policy intervention. Our party has proposed meaningful policy interventions that reflect the Canadian context, the fact that it's cold here, we have to drive from place to place, and we are a natural resources-based intensive economy. So things like energy efficiency initiatives, regulatory processes that incent and allow for adoption of innovative technologies. That's what we will be focusing on, and certainly I hope that the Prime Minister understands that by imposing pricing frameworks that don't reduce greenhouse gas emissions and further conflate and inflame the national unity issues that we are seeing, we are abdicating our responsibility on the question of climate as well as on the question of national unity.
Him saying today, Alberta has a system in place for large emitters, and you guys can go forward with that? I mean, isn't there some what's your response to that?
You know, I just feel like he's got no plan, right? It's like day to day. And the problem that we're seeing in Alberta is an investment crisis caused by political instability and uncertainty. You know, my colleague Shannon is behind me. Shannon's done a lot of work in the energy sector. You know, the Prime Minister is always going to, and rightly so, face questions about how Canada is going to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but just sort of arbitrarily saying, okay, well, maybe we'll take this province's plan, but maybe we'll still put a carbon tax here. I don't know about Ontario. I don't know about New Brunswick. It just seems like a day-to-day failure approach, and that's why I'm skeptical. And frankly, that uncertainty is, again, it's creating an investment problem in the country.
Will Alberta be happy with today's, even if it's a day-to-day,
I
or will they be happy with today's
tell
announcement?
you fairly certainly, and I'm looking to my colleagues, that there is nobody particularly happy in my province with Justin Trudeau right now. Nobody will ever get.
Can you speak to your party's strategy behind supporting Anthony Rota for the speakership as opposed to Jeff Regan? Earlier this week there were reports of that. Can you sort of speak to that as to why that was the case?
I wouldn't presume to speak on behalf of any colleagues' private secret ballot. I would say this, I think it was an indication of actually the Liberal backbench discontent. It is rare to see a sitting speaker dethroned, and you need to have the governing party's support in order to do that. So I think that question is probably you'll get some better tea out of the Liberal caucus than us.
Is united behind Andrew Scheer being the person in the House to hold this government to account?
You know, Mr. Scheer today in his speech made it very clear that we are united in addressing the problems that I just addressed. Everybody that we represent doesn't want drama. They want us to work for them. And that is why we're standing here united behind him and behind our constituents.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Smith.